Um, my name is Shawn Leitner. I'm product management coach and consultant for Pathfinder Product Labs out of Columbus. I work remotely here in Cleveland. I have over 10 years of product management experience in the public and private sector, experience with payments, e-commerce, financial services, logistics. Very excited to host today's roundtable. You're very excited to have the panelists today, Kayla Lawrence, Dan Adams, and Jeff Finefrock. A wide array of experience, been involved with innovation and product management efforts, strategic efforts at their organizations, directly or indirectly with some consulting efforts. So really looking forward to today's conversation. And I'll hand it over to Dan to get us started.
Okay, great. I'll start with a quick bio. So I was born at an early age. Oh, you wanted the short version, Shawn.
Only an hour, Dan, only an hour.
So I'm Dan Adams, president of the AIM Institute. We're based here in quiet little Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, and we train very large companies all around the planet on voice of customer methods for B2B. Good to be here, Shawn.
Jeff?
I am Jeff Finefrock. Thanks for having us here today. I am the CEO of Military Hire. That is a job board for military veterans. So it's been a great experience to learn some of the areas of digital product management. Traditionally, I have been a part of mechanical products in companies like Goodyear Engineered Products, chemical products, and Exxon Mobil Chemical, and other companies like Lubrizol and the Timken Company. So again, great to be here.
Hey everybody, I'm Kelly Lawrence. I'm the founder and CEO of Lawrence Innovation. We're a growth advisory, really specialized in B2B, strategic innovation, new business development, all based on customer insights. So like the others on the call, my background is about 20 years of new product development and breakthrough innovation all the way into the Horizon 3 kind of stuff, and really helping to accelerate growth rates and accelerate that path to revenue at companies small and large, including Berkshire Hathaway and Fortune Brands.
Great. Thanks, Kelly, Dan, and Jeff. Looking forward to jumping right in. Kelly, want to get us started?
Absolutely. One of the things that I really like to challenge is to say, what is innovation? So many times we get wrapped up and we say, innovation is about inventing this really cool new thing. But at the end of the day, we have to make money. So I look at innovation and I say, okay, it's an invention, but it's also commercialization. We need a customer unmet need. We need technology and capability, and we need a way to make money. So when we have a successful innovation, we're solving customer unmet needs better than the next best alternative. So if we have widget A and somebody has widget B, maybe that's not enough. Maybe there's some other thing out there that we're not even thinking about, right? Electric cars. Maybe I don't drive anymore. Maybe I take the bus. Maybe I ride share. All kinds of different alternatives. We also have to deliver sustainable, profitable revenue. I can't stress that enough. It's not just about the cool idea. We have to make money. Shawn, can you flip? So let's talk about the problem with innovation. The thing I see is innovation, company, business failure rates, they're just too high. If we go back into 2020, I know none of us want to relive 2020, but in May, good heavens, 85% of the companies were in decline. And that came from the Board of Innovation. We weren't ready for what hit us. In any given year, Forbes will tell us that 8 out of 10 businesses fail. The Ansoff Matrix will tell us that 95% of transformative initiatives fail. So when we're doing a new market that we're not familiar with, we're going after new technology that we're not familiar with, we put them together, that's a lot of unfamiliarity. And Booz tells us that 66% of our new products fail within 2 years of launch. That's a lot of failure. So I think a lot of us are very passionate here on the call today about how to fix this and turn it around. So Shawn, let's talk about that. What do we do? The top reasons for failure is really a lack of marketing science. It goes back to the front end of innovation. In B2B, there's so much we can learn in advance. We can usually find the answers. Sometimes we fail because we're just not deeply connected enough with customers. We're talking to them, but maybe we're not asking the right questions. Sometimes we don't have a value proposition. We're lacking differentiation versus that next best alternative. Sometimes we have a value proposition, but we just don't communicate it very well. It'll sell itself. Anybody heard that one? Well, if they don't know that you have it, they're not going to come to you. And the other part of it is inability to nail a profitable business model with proven revenue streams. Anybody familiar with Plated? It was a subscription box meal service, and they were growing. And I used to subscribe. It was fantastic, but it just wasn't sustainable. They couldn't scale it. They didn't have the model in place to continue to make money, and they went bankrupt, unfortunately, right before the pandemic. So how do we fix this? We have to improve our use of marketing science to really accelerate the growth with sustainable new business.
Kelly, question for you. You mentioned earlier that we need to make money. When you think of some things like nonprofits or public sector companies, their direction is not necessarily to make money. What would you say? Like, how would they define innovation in those spaces where maybe revenue is not the main driver?
Sure. Well, you still have to break even, right? Somebody's got to fund it. But at the end of the day, are you addressing a customer unmet need? Is there something that you're doing better than somebody else to meet a desired outcome of a customer?
You mentioned customers. Well, that's nice tee up, nice segue for our next speaker. I'm a big fan of memes, so this is the classic Star Wars meme. Anakin Skywalker says, "We're an innovative company." Padme says, "Awesome, so you're talking to your customers." And they're typically not. So innovation, talking to customers, Dan kind of guide us through a little bit of what that means and how to be better at it.
Sure. Just two quick slides to kind of set the stage here. So what we find is our focus is on B2B. B2C customers and consumers sometimes can tell you what they want and sometimes they cannot. I'll give you an example. If I made video games and I said, "Hey, what do you want in video games?" You might say, "Well, let me play with it. I'll tell you if it's fun." If I made a snack food and say, "What do you want in snack food?" You might say, "Let me taste it." If I said, "Hey, what do you want in men's suit?" Let me try it on. Let me see the fit. So sometimes end consumers can't really tell you too well what they want. But when it gets to B2B, they can always tell you, "Hey, increase my line speed here, cut my defects here, reduce my labor rate." So in B2B, they can tell you what they want, maybe not how the solution should look, but what they want. So what we recommend for B2B, Shawn, are two types of interviews. The first one is qualitative. We call it discovery. You would go out and do maybe 6 to 10 of these in a target market segment. And you would say, "What else, Mr. Customer?" And it involves a little bit of probing, some skills, voice of customer skills. And you keep getting more and more of these customer needs out there. You're diverging, and you get as many as you can. Then, after you're done with that, you go back and do quantitative interviews. And you say, "Well, how important is this on a scale of 1 to 10? And how satisfied are you with it today?" And we're hoping to find some needs that score high in importance and low in current satisfaction. It's the only thing they might pay us a premium for. So you diverge first, then you converge. And the goal of this thing is, in the first round of interviews, to stop errors of omission. Now, an error of omission is failing to uncover an unarticulated customer need. No team ever gets faulted for it because nobody knows they omitted it. And then the goal in the second round is to stop errors of commission, which is picking the wrong thing to work on. And we've guided hundreds of teams around the world on this. And what we find is that they don't do that second round, they usually will guess wrong. So one more slide on this, just to kind of bring it together. We don't have time to go into all the details of this, but we have studied and researched our client base, And this data holds whether they're in North America, Europe, Asia, you name it. And basically it goes like this. When teams start this process, they usually have some idea of what they think customers want. So our question was, after they do these two types of interviews, did it change your view of what customers wanted? Did it impact the design of your product? Well, when we asked that question, about 16%, or about 1 out of 6, say, it had a moderate or a slight impact on my product design. So they were probably on the right track. But 5 out of 6 teams said, man, these interviews had a great or significant impact. Bottom line is, those 5 out of 6 teams probably would have developed the wrong new product that didn't really meet the needs of these customers. Think of it like a 6-sided die with 5 no's and 1 yes, if you're asking, do we really understand customer needs? So that's our thing. That's what we train people in. Companies of all different sizes. And what's really exciting, we don't do it for them. We're not the hired gun, but our passion is teaching them how to do it because we think that's a competitive strength, is to understand customer needs.
Now, Dan, in B2B, like you said, it's a lot easier to talk to your customers and they're more willing to participate as opposed to B2C, particularly on large scale when you think of consumer goods or digital goods, for example.
Yeah.
How is it different between B2C and B2B, and how can the B2C group do these kinds of interviews to get these kind of insights, on a mass scale?
Well, it depends what kind of B2C. So what we find is, I use B2B and B2C, but it's kind of blunt and imprecise. I'll tell you what I mean. So let's say that I work in the office for you guys, and you send me out to buy a stapler, okay? Well, technically, that's a B2B purchase, isn't it? But yet, my knowledge, my interest, my insight's pretty low for buying a stapler. Now, if I go out and I'm looking for a new car, I've been telling my wife I need a new sports car, okay? Now, my interest and my knowledge, I'm studying, it's actually pretty high. So we developed something we call the B2B index. And basically, it studies, you answer a bunch of questions. It's a free thing on our website. But basically, the thing that determines how B2B you are is 5 questions or 5 areas. How much knowledge does the customer have? Education, training, time on the job. How much interest could this really impact? Could it make them a hero at work, for instance? Consumers aren't too interested. You have to pay them to come to a focus group. How objective are they? Do they make rational, stable decisions? Can they predict their needs before they see a prototype? And then how concentrated is the market? Are there very many customers? So I would say this. If you're at the far end of the consumer scale, really, really consumer oriented, you probably won't get a lot of benefit out of these interviews. You're probably going to have to come up with prototypes, test them, get market reaction, do testing. We don't get in that space. I'd be pathetic in that space. But the more B2B you get, the more you can have intelligent conversations. Now, here's the thing that's really a shame. Most B2B companies aren't doing these sort of interviews in depth. They're still guessing at what customers want. And because of that, they're introducing a tremendous amount of commercial risk into their new product development. When if they are B2B and they do this properly, when they go into the development stage and develop the new product in the lab or something, they really only ought to be working with technical risk, but that's not where we're at today. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, these interviews seem like it's a large investment of time and effort and skills at an organization to be able to do these interviews. How do you convince senior leaders, your product development methodology, the other groups that might be a bit apprehensive to invest in this? How do you show them that this is time worth doing, that you ultimately will be working on the things that the customers will make a difference for the customers? How do you overcome that?
Well, I usually ask 2 questions. I usually ask them what their success rate is on new product development today. And again, many of these are very, very large companies spending literally tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in R&D. So they usually sigh when I ask them, oh, well, we have 25% is very typical. Once you start development, that's an average number. They go, oh. So I said, so what happened to all the R&D? Well, that was all wasted. Okay. Then I say, now, what was the general cause of your failures? Was it because you couldn't do the job technically, or you didn't really understand the market needs? And they go, well, market needs. And that's been reinforced with other research. So I say, okay, it will take some resources. But my suggestion, sir or ma'am, is you do this. You move some resources up and out. And what I mean by that is instead of just keeping all your resources in the lab and developing stuff that doesn't make sense, let's move some resources to the front end. And then instead of talking to ourselves about what we think customers want, let's move the resources out and ask the customers. And then what we usually do is do a few pilot projects, and they invariably, the teams come back and go, oh my goodness, we had no idea customers wanted this. And then it starts catching on. But it's not like this. It takes a little while, Shawn, to your point.
Sure, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure when Henry Ford went and asked his customers, they would just ask for a faster horse, right? The old cliche.
Yeah.
So you got to know your customers well too, and what they want or may not want.
Well, if I can, on that point real quickly, first of all, when they said they wanted a faster horse, they were giving another solution. So you make a really good point. In these interviews, we train people, don't get into the solutions, get into the outcomes. I want to get there faster. I don't want to be cold. I don't want it to be as bumpy. I don't want to have to feed my fuel source. I don't want to clean up after my fuel. Those are all outcomes. So if we got those, we might get to the car.
Right. Excellent point. Good. Okay, cool. Thanks, Dan. And inherent in innovation is risk. And innovation is risky, of course, because you're doing something that you haven't done before or your competitors haven't done before. But there's also a risk in not innovating too, right? And how do we acknowledge the risks of innovation? How do we de-risk it? How do we still innovate yet mitigate the risk in doing so? And Jeff has all the answers.
Oh, thanks, Shawn. And yeah, so the most important thing I learned in school wasn't in college, it wasn't in high school, it was in third grade. Mrs. Schumacher formed my career. She just didn't realize it. She taught me about who, what, when, where, and how, and why. So we've heard some of those words already today. And innovation does not need to be a job where one person says this is what we need to do. Dan touched on it. Kelly touched on it. You really need to know what the market wants, and it can be very intentional. I think the mistake often about an innovation is that it is some magic formula. It's by chance. And I'm here to tell you that innovation is very planned and very deliberate. If you can understand those key market needs in advance, they have horizons. We talked about the car, and then there's the spaceship, and then who knows what's beyond that. The point is it's motion and travel. So what I get into in my career is answering those questions for companies and de-risking things. The other thing I would say is that innovation is a team sport. If it's just you that is in charge of innovation, good luck, because I wish you the best. It's really about a team effort, and I'll kind of get into that. So the who, is how many people really need your solution. If it's a novel, if you only talk to a few people and listen only to what you want to hear, you're going to innovate in the wrong direction. The what is important. Are you really providing a solution to the problem? And the what isn't always a product. It could be an idea. It could be intellectual property. And if you hear one thing I say today is innovation is knowing when to stop. When you have a novel solution, you want to be the first to claim that. Production and development take time as well. So locking up that idea and defining that and capturing that in intellectual property is really, really key. The when, I think we all have our rose-colored glasses in times of developing a solution. Oftentimes, and hear me on this, we aren't the ultimate providers of our solution. Manufacturing, engineering, supply chain, these are partners in innovation. And if we pretend that we've got all the solutions and not include those groups, we're overlooking the when. It takes time to innovate and develop a solution, engineer a solution. So we've really got to take that into consideration as what's that horizon. And dare I say, sometimes our own companies are not the solution. You might need to go to partnerships and work with outside groups to circumvent that when to be sooner, because speed wins. So solutions change from region to region. What we have maybe as a solution here in the States might not be a solution overseas. And understanding and quantifying not just where it's needed, but the standards that are needed to be achieved in Europe or Asia cannot be overlooked, whether it be intellectual property, whether it be design standards or manufacturing standards. If you want a global solution, you better take out the map and make sure that your solution addresses the where. The why, getting to a root cause, and I think we touched on it a little bit earlier. I love the practice of, it's called the 5 why practice. And I have 7 daughters, so I've actually been through this, but it's not in this area of innovation. It's just life. But when you ask the question of why 5 times, you answer that and you get to a root cause. So it's not, ultimately that first answer that gets to your root cause of why you're doing innovation. So I really, that is one tool, the 5 why exercise, is to getting to why you're innovating. The how, I talked about it a little bit better, or a little bit more. Finding a solution and who can deliver the solution is important. How you go about delivering that innovation shouldn't go to the loudest scientist or engineer or salesperson in your organization. My point of saying that is, how do you deliver innovation in a certain solution should be paired with multiple ideas in your organization versus the competition. Sometimes our competition knows how to do things better. And so when we grade the how of how we deliver innovation, we need to do it without, again, the rose-colored glasses, but with the opportunity to leapfrog our competition and really take a strategic look at how we go about delivering it sustainably. Back to Kelly's point, you've got to be able to deliver that multiple times over time, into the future. And then how much? How much is your technology really worth? There is that opportunity versus delivering. And we talked about delivering a little earlier. If you can match those two risks in time, if you meet the need with the solution at the right point in time as soon as possible and as accurately as possible, you're going to innovate, optimize your ROI. So I've been on both the startup side and the Fortune 500 side. And at some point in your innovation career, you're going to have to face somebody very senior to you and explain why you should invest all this money. So if you do the due diligence, you can project innovation with an ROI. And there are several tools that we could talk about offline about that. But again, appreciate Mrs. Shoemaker. She really guided some of the key principles that you really need to ask in innovation. So I can go on to the next slide if we can. So financial analysis, I'll be quick on this. Ultimately, innovation can be forecasted with ROI. And I've been told a lot of times in my career that it's really not possible. And through the teamwork, through working with all those practices that we talked about, you can de-risk innovation. I would encourage you to follow some of these principles. Limit the analysis to 2 to 3 years. Anything beyond that is something akin to a fairy tale. You can only predict so far into the future. But write your plans in pencil, not pen. Be willing to say, "Hey, I was wrong." I had an instance where we developed a new innovation and the sales were twice what we forecasted, and everyone, wanted to celebrate. And I said, we were 100% wrong. We underestimated the opportunity. So again, be willing to admit you're wrong. Write your plans in pencil, not pen. Include all the investments. Don't shortcut what is really going to be taken into account to deliver this innovation, whether it be from an engineering standpoint, capital investment, personnel. Really make sure that you're including everything in the proverbial sausage to understand what it's going to take to make an innovation. Have low, medium, and high risk plans. Ultimately, someone's going to challenge you that you've lowballed the solution or that you're going too high. Be willing to admit, here's the high, medium, low outlook of the opportunity, but have rationale behind that. And then I would also say that you need to know your market growth. To Dan's point about understanding the markets, you really need to understand where those markets have gone over time, and are they on the uptick or on the downward slope in terms of compounded annual growth rates. And then again, I would define your leading and lagging indicators to track really what the reality of your plan is. And again, understand that markets are volatile and things change, but to stay the course. That's the last thing I'll really say is innovation is truly a culture. It's a team effort, and you cannot go it alone. You've really got to speak the language and have these standards or this understanding across your organization if you want to have a sustainable and deliverable innovation culture. So I'll pause there. I think
Jeff, I have a question for you. When you mentioned when to stop, you mentioned stop it here, right? That's a positive outcome. In my experience, that's viewed as failure. But we, particularly here at Pathfinder, in our product management consulting efforts, that's a positive outcome. How do you spin that? How do you sell it, if you will, as a positive outcome, in avoidance of potential failure later, or investing revenue, time, money, and resources into something that maybe will not have the ROI you want? How would you spin that and sell that, and the stigma of stopping viewed as a failure?
Sure. I don't know how many of you had to convince a manufacturing organization to stop, the presses and put in a new line and put all their stock in a new innovation. I've had to do that, and versus an approach to say, here is the design standards, the specifications and testing standards for a new technology, and you audit other providers of that technology to be kind of a hub and spoke approach. As long as the companies can perform and deliver to your company's standards, it's really no different than building a plant in another country. The name on the outside of the door, is that same company. In the model I just described, you're carrying through those same standards. So it's really about a proliferation of mass market, as opposed to tooling up country by country or region by region. And there's the time value of money. The longer you wait to proliferate a technology, the longer it takes to gather market share. And so I would just say it is a faster growth rate or growth curve, and use that as the impetus to incentivize management to say, this is the path we need to go. I've done that. And, sometimes it's a matter of, that is a challenge, achieving those standards and proving that out is a challenge, but I highly recommend at least giving that a shot.
If I may add on to that, going back to the earlier slides, right? If we've got, and something that Dan said, if we have a 25% hit rate in innovation, then isn't it better to be able to identify those duds, the 75% that's dying early on? And, I talk a lot about opportunity cost. Look, we can shove all these things in our portfolio. If we have 30 things, I once came into a new role leading an America's team, and there were 100 projects on the books. We couldn't do 100 projects, and certainly could not do them well, and definitely could not scale up and invest in the manufacturing tooling like us talking about. We really needed to pick and choose. So we have a lot of discussions about priorities. We have a lot of discussions about Where do we place our bets and do a little bit to understand, and then really go after the ones really hard and all in for the ones that we're most likely to be successful in. So it's a lot about prioritization. It's a lot about cost avoidance. It's a lot about opportunity cost.
If I could borrow one of Jeff's whens and one of Jeff's whys from Mrs. Schumacher, when you kill a project, you should ask, well, when did we kill it? Did you kill it soon enough? It's never good to keep going with a bad project, but could we have known earlier when to kill that? And why did we kill it? Did we kill it because the opportunity wasn't good, or did we kill it because the team did a terrible job of execution? Most companies don't differentiate between opportunity quality and execution quality, and they should. So it's good to kill, but we need to really think about, that when and that why question, I think, and get better at it.
Yeah, Jeff, you mentioned something that's interesting, that innovation is a culture. How does a company go about, there might be pockets within a large enterprise organization, right? There might be a innovation stream or innovation lab where people look at, well, they're going to do the innovating and we're going to do the BAU, the business as usual, keep the lights on kind of work. Like, how do you proliferate the innovation mindset throughout an organization so that everybody can participate to some capacity, no matter what level of the organization? I guess this question for all of you, what have you seen successful in terms of cultivating that innovative culture throughout an organization, particularly, mid to large size companies?
Sure. I think you need champions in all the functional facets of a company. I have examples where I came into a company and there's marketing and sales, and it's an adversarial relationship at times, not pervasively, but when it comes to new products, like, oh, if only engineering had that quicker and whatnot. That's neither party's fault. It's a lack of communication, like any relationship. And the other piece is, let's say that those two groups are perfectly in sync. Manufacturing comes along and says, yeah, we can't make that, we're full. And then, man, I wish I would have had supply chain on my team because we could do some of that outsourced innovation. So it is building a team language to say we all have a part in this. And to the earlier discussion about risk, the lesson I learned is to de-risk projects in those facets. There's market risk, there is engineering risk, can it be designed? And then operational or manufacturing, can it be made? And then supply chain comes into that. So when you're talking about de-risking technology, it is a team sport. And don't forget sales and customer service, because they know, and like Dan's function of really understanding the customer, it better be led by that and not by some, sole person in the company claiming to have the corner on innovation. And I'm pointing to myself, it's to say it is a team effort. You better have those groups in sync. Anyone else want to comment on that?
No, I love that. I was lucky enough to build a new business from scratch in a Fortune 500 company. And, one of the things that worked really well was breaking silos. And breaking silos is not easy. And, we did something very similar to what Jeff said. I literally brought everybody together for an offsite meeting. I was leading this team. It was a matrix organization, so nobody reports directly to me. So it's all about influence, right? And so to do that, you really have to listen to the concerns, the ideas of every single stakeholder that you need to bring with you. Supply chain, procurement, customer service, sales, technical, right? Everybody. And then you got to bring it back and you got to say, guys, this is what I heard. Here's my take of what I think we all said. And here's how I've spun this into a vision for us and what we want to achieve, and make that vision very clear and show everybody, wow, look what we could do. And then get that feedback, to say, okay, did I hear you correctly? Are we aligned in this vision? And then the rest of it is about creating curiosity, making it okay for everybody to ask the questions. And like Jeff said, write the plans in pencil. It's okay for any team member to question at any point in time. It's okay to challenge our assumptions and say, do we really understand what must be true for us to be successful? So if you've got active listening and that open communication, that dialogue going, a vision, and a willingness to challenge the assumptions, you can really create that all-in innovation culture.
Yeah, really good points, both of you. You know, to me, if you want to sustain that innovation, a really key part of it is the leadership. We divide leaders into 4 different buckets. We call them builders, remodelers, decorators, and realtors. And I won't go into all of the explanation. We are actually starting some research, and someday, maybe in about a month or 2, I'll be able to tell you what percentage employees think their bosses are a builder versus a realtor. But a decorator, for instance, would be somebody who's more concerned about the quarterly financial report, making the place look good, good curb appeal. A builder, you know, you asked Shawn about medium to large companies. Every single one of those companies was founded by a builder. If you look at every single one of them, they were innovating. There was something they were going to bring that was going to make the lives of their customers better. And, you know, if that spirit is snuffed out and it all becomes about the quarterly financial report, you still may have some innovators in your company, but you may not be able to keep them very long. They may go out and do a startup, or they may go to another company where they're more appreciated. So I think a really key element of keeping that innovation alive, take 3M. They're one of our clients, and their CEO many years ago, decades ago, McKnight is his name. He once said, if you put fences around people, you get sheep, you know, and they really worked hard at inspiring people to be builders and to create something of value. So I think that is missing in a lot of corporations today, but I think it's very necessary.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've kind of hit on, you know, the physical goods space, but also digital goods. How is innovation different between, you know, creating digital goods when you think of a lot of this audience would be involved with, for example, you know, mobile apps and websites and technology-oriented, software-oriented products versus, you know, physical goods, you know, widgets and conveyor belts and you know, airplanes and you know, bolts and those kinds of things. Like because there's different aspects involved there. You know, Jeff, I think you mentioned supply chain earlier. So how does it look different when we're talking digital goods versus analog goods?
I think I'll give one example. I was at a mechanical goods company. They made a product that was in a high, you know, sensitivity area, meaning it couldn't fail, and so monitoring its maintenance and its improvement over time was really key. And so a digital component was added, some tracking devices to share that information and to track not only maintenance, but those records of, you know, keeping the product up to date with its maintenance also led to failure modes analysis, meaning where products had some challenges. That innovation or that data talked about or helped our company understand life cycle and failure modes analysis and product improvements. And oh, by the way, we were communicating with our end user about the product. So something that had been relegated to, you know, the sales channel or distribution. So it rekindled a relationship with the manufacturer to the end user, which I think a lot of large companies, you know, want to have. So it then got into sales prediction to say, okay, the life of this product under these environments is this. And so the data helped the resale of that product and product improvements. So data, I think companies have so much data that, and companies are getting much better with CRM systems and other tools. I'm not saying this is some unknown entity, but utilizing data for the sake of innovation in your current products is very advantageous.
I'll take it a different direction. Every product, physical or otherwise, maybe it's digital, maybe it's a service. It's all about understanding that customer unmet need and what am I going to do differently that is better than the next best alternative that addresses that need. So that's the same. So many moons ago in a prior life, I was working in mortgage marketing. And you don't have a physical product in the financial services area. So, but what did I do? I went out and I did voice a customer. I met with mortgage brokers to say, hey, what are the challenges? What are the needs? And we built a digital product that enabled the servicing between mortgage banking at the mothership of lending to be very seamless and integrated with the broker, and then make the sale of those loans very easy back to the Fannie Mae's and Freddie Mac's. So it was all about service, nothing physical to touch. But it's just really listening to those unmet needs and saying, okay, what are the challenges? So you can do it anywhere.
I'll build on Kelly's point just a little bit. If you break the problem down into understanding customer needs and delivering a solution, or another way of saying is, what's the right question? What should we be working on? And then what's the right answer? What's our new product or offering? We have seen our clients apply those two types of interviews we mentioned earlier, and they'll be in the same public workshop together, getting the same exercises, and they use exactly the same methods. In fact, I'm racking my brain trying to think of anything different when they try to understand the needs of digital. Well, we break it down into 4 types of B2B: materials, components, equipment, and services. And so on the needs side, it's identical. But there are some interesting differences when it comes to the solution side between digital and the physical world. For one thing, you can iterate so much faster in the digital world. If you're making a jet aircraft engine, the next generation may be a long time out. I was working with a company made elevators. They launch a new elevator every 10 years at this one European company. Well, digital, you can just kind of keep making changes. Also, with current patent law, it's not as easy to get patent protection on a lot of digital solutions anymore. For a while it was. So there's other differences in there. So I think break it down into what's the right question, what's the right answer. Use the same methods for understanding customer needs, but be aware there's some differences on the solution side.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for tying that all together, Dan, for sure. And I think ultimately, throughout this conversation, kind of come up with 2 different ideas, or 2 different themes that have been resonating through the panelist conversation. And one is ideas and one is culture. For ideas, reference quote, I'm a big quote guy. So Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., 19th century American physician, poet, and writer, he said, every now and then a man's mind is stretched by a new idea and never shrinks back to its former dimensions. So we humans are full of ideas, right? There's an endless bounty of ideas collectively, particularly when we think of the team effort that innovation takes. So let's keep exploring, right? Keep being creative. I think Kelly mentioned that earlier. Keep talking to customers and understanding the problems and that our customers are having and the opportunities that might exist by solutioning something for them. Keep challenging the status quo, right? There's no limit to what we can do. The other one is culture. Former President Barack Obama said, change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. We're the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. Now, I don't think he was talking about tech innovation here, but he was basically talking about change and driving that change, being that change advocate. If you're in an organization that's not necessarily innovative throughout it, it might be in pockets or may not be present at all. It's a team effort in it for us to be able to invoke that change, advocate for that change, right? We have to be smart about it, right? We have to want to have it. We got to have the desire to do it. And that can be anybody within the organization. It can be, you can be in the C-suite or you can be an individual contributor. So how best can we do that and change a culture to be more innovative, mitigate any risks, talk to our customers, think creatively about our solutions, and then we'll be able to elevate our game and provide our customers even more value. So again, like to thank Kelly, Dan, and Jeff for being part of the conversation today. I took a lot of notes myself, so I learned a lot today, and hopefully everyone else did too. So appreciate everyone's time. Appreciate the availability of Jeff, Dan, and Kelly for joining us today, and Chris for giving us this forum to have this conversation. Thanks, everybody.